Curious. If you look at everyday diets in Uganda, people are largely eating matoke, yams, and millet. Yet, vast stretches of the country's agricultural landscape are dedicated to coffee and cotton, crops grown almost entirely for export. Before European arrival, East African communities farmed, raised animals, and forged iron tools exclusively for their own survival, trading small surpluses with their neighbors through a local barter system. When the British and German administrations arrived, they didn't set up shop to help locals grow more food. Their objective was to secure cheap raw materials to feed the factories back in Europe. To force self-sufficient farmers to plant inedible, labor-intensive crops, the colonizers dismantled the existing way of life and replaced it with what became known as the colonial economy. They rewired East Africa. A self-sustaining local ecosystem was turned into an economic machine designed solely to feed foreign industrial needs. The first lever they pulled was monetization. The colonial government began imposing new levies, like the hut tax and the gun tax, demanding payment in European currency rather than traditional livestock. This sudden, mandatory need for coins forced African farmers to enter the cash economy. To survive, they either had to grow cash crops to sell to European buyers or leave home to perform wage labor. In Uganda, the British implemented a peasant farming system. Because the 1900 Buganda Agreement largely protected local land rights, African farmers grew cash crops on their own small family plots, absorbing all the financial and agricultural risks themselves. Next door in Kenya, the administration relied on a drastically different plantation farming system. The British seized the fertile Kenya highlands for white settlers and pushed local populations into designated reserves. Stripped of their land, Kenyans were forced into cheap labor on massive foreign-owned estates. Whether through coercive taxation in Uganda or direct land theft in Kenya, these agricultural systems ensured that African labor was entirely captured by European interests. Once these cash crops were harvested, the colonial governments built factories, like the cotton ginneries in Jinja, to process them, but they intentionally stopped short of building factories to manufacture finished goods. This chart shows the logic of bulk reduction. The colonizers processed raw materials just enough to strip away the heavy seeds and useless bulk, saving immense amounts of money on shipping costs. They enforced a strict ban on local manufacturing to keep East Africa as a captive consumer market. The raw cotton went to Europe to be spun into clothing, which was then sold back to East Africans at a massive markup. Moving these processed raw materials out of the interior required a massive piece of infrastructure, the Uganda Railway. The tracks were not laid down to help local communities travel or trade with one another. They bypassed local connections to create a direct pipeline from inland resource hubs, like the copper mines in Kasese and the cotton fields in Jinja, straight to the Indian Ocean. The entire transport network functioned as a giant, outward-facing conveyor belt built for extraction. This economic shift exacted a profound social toll. A massive wave of migrant labor emerged as men were forced to leave their villages to find wage-paying work to cover their taxes. This mass migration fractured traditional family structures, leaving women solely responsible for the heavy burden of village upkeep and producing enough food to keep their communities from starving. Meanwhile, the workers faced grueling conditions in the mines and railway camps, where poor sanitation and harsh labor quotas triggered severe disease outbreaks, including deadly waves of sleeping sickness. Traditional African self-sufficiency was systematically broken by four rigid pillars: monetization, mandatory cash crops, processing without manufacturing, and extractive transport. The colonial economy remains visible in the landscape today. Every modern Ugandan highway, aging railway track, and vast commercial field is a permanent, surviving footprint of an extractive machine built over a century ago.